We're just going to have a brief presentation about NAAMA NextGen, and then we'll jump into today's panel. So NAAMA NextGen, we are the student branch of NAAMA, and our mission is to bring together Arab American healthcare students and support them in their career goals. Next slide, please. We have over 50 chapters across the nation, and we have over 1,250 members as well, with a strong presence in the Midwest region, including in the state of Michigan and also in Illinois. Some high-level events that we have done in the past include some research symposium, our annual national summit, which we'll talk about it later. We are very involved in research, especially global health related research. We've even had launched an internship in Lebanon, which we're excited to hopefully in the future be able to send future interns to. Neil here has also been leading our podcast, Voices from the Field, so check that out if you haven't done so yet. And in general, we just foster a really great community with mentorship and lots of networking opportunities. And yeah.
So since we are being joined by people from all three, from Northwestern, OUWB, and the University of Michigan Medical School, we just wanted to highlight the chapters there. This is our chapter at Northwestern's Feinberg School of Medicine, and these are some, different photos from fundraising events, networking events, and just social events. And here are some pictures of our OUWB members at our national summit, where they presented some research and just also engaged in all the other activities that summit members or NAAMA NextGen members engaged in. And we also have our University of Michigan Medical School chapter. And these are some photos from the mentorship activity that they do, where they link medical students with undergraduate students and develop a mentorship network, and also some photos from the summit. We do want to do a little self-plug here. So Dina mentioned that NAAMA NextGen has a national summit that's held every year, and our seventh national summit will be held on Saturday, October 3rd, 2026. So if you are interested in attending, please make sure to mark your calendars for that date. And, more information will come on our Instagram, but as well as our website. But without further ado, I would like to go ahead and introduce our panel. So we're so glad to be joined by, three experts in admissions from a wide range of schools. So first we have Miss Becky Weeks, who is the Director of Admissions at the University of Michigan Medical School. And we're so glad that she's able to join us again for another event. We also have Dean Kundu, and she is the Associate Dean of Admissions at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. This is our first time having her on for an admissions panel, so I'm so excited to hear from her. And we also have Dr. Abhinav Krishnan, who is the Associate Dean of Admissions at OUWB School of Medicine. So glad to hear from you again. But without further ado, let's just hop into the panel. I'm going to stop my share. Can everyone? I think we're all spotlighted. Yes. Okay. So, just we often hear about holistic admissions being done, but also that schools look for someone who fits their mission. So how do you approach holistic review, and what does a strong mission fit look like in an applicant?
I can get us started. I think when we're looking at applications, I like to emphasize that there's a lot of things that are common, and I think that's okay. Most people that are coming into medical school have explored medicine in a meaningful way, have had some direct patient care experiences, obviously are academically prepared. And then we start getting into the alliance, possibly of mission fit. So, for example, at Feinberg, we identify ourselves as a research intensive institution. We have all of our students come in and participate in scholarly activities. And so, based on that goal and mission, we have an expectation that students have engaged in some type of research activity in a meaningful way. The other places for mission fit for us would be that we kind of profess that we're trying to build leaders in medicine. And so then we will look for activities of engagement and leadership that have occurred previously to kind of predict that that would continue to occur into the future. So those are the spaces, and you can imagine that many missions at medical schools, I know my colleagues here are going to say, oh yeah, but we think some of the similar things, of course, and that makes sense. That we all are seeking clinical excellence, seeking advancement and discovery. And then there's these other arms of education, community health, and community partnerships that exist at all major medical centers. So it is mission fit, but there's kind of emphasis that might be placed in each institution that's nuanced a little bit.
I'm happy to go next. So just to add about mission fit, I think that it is up to each individual applicant to think about how they fit with that mission and how that mission fits with their goals in medicine. And I think that if you take the time, do some self-reflection, you just need to be able to articulate that to the school. Why do you feel like you fit with their mission? I think that different schools, of course, some missions are more narrow, some are more broad. So especially with the ones that have a more broad mission, like Michigan, for example, you want to be able to articulate how you think you fit with their mission and how their mission speaks to you. As far as holistic review, to touch on that question, how do we approach holistic review? We want to look at every single applicant in the context of their journey. We only know what you share with us. We are not going to read between the lines or write your story for you. So we encourage you to, share what you're willing to share with us. Be specific and don't assume that we know what your journey has been like. We want you to do additional self-reflection and tell us beyond the what you did, why did you do that? Why have you made the choices that you made? How has that impacted you either as a human, as a future physician, a future researcher? Really go deeper than just the superficial. I worked in this lab, or I volunteered for this many hours at this type of clinic. That doesn't tell us a lot more, other than this is how you spent your time. We want to know, why was that meaningful, even if it is not your most meaningful experience. Why has this helped shape who you are and your journey into medicine? And I think throughout these questions, we're probably going to dive deeper into what a holistic review looks like. So I'm going to pause there and let Dr. Krishnan respond.
I don't even know what to say after all of that. No, and it's such an honor to be here with my colleagues here, and also to meet all of you. And we're all of us here are just so like thrilled to like see each and every one of you, your names and your faces. That being said, one thing that I do want to state though is that and I think it was remarkably said by Dr. Kundu and then also Miss Weeks, which is. Um, just how we approach the holistic review process, and then also really what we're talking about when it comes to mission fit. But I think more than anything, I think the only thing I'll add in addition to a lot of what was said, was just that um, there's a lot of discussion these days about what we're trying to look for, and we've gotten a lot of feedback recently from all of you and so many other students about the idea that is it safe to put myself on paper? And is the way in which we approach holistic review going to capture who I really am? And I just want to say that yes, it is. Like we really take, and that's really why we're talking like that, right? We use the word holistic all the time, but I really want to just emphasize really what that means. Like we're really going to take every aspect of who you are, your journey, what brought you here, your history, like your legacy, all of those things that your families and everybody else have really done to instill values in you, and how you've used those values to shape who you are, and how you've actually walked a journey towards medicine. is really what we use, right? So it's not just metrics driven, but it's really much more than that. And to Dr. Kundu's point, I think all of our medical programs, we're one big family here. And, certainly there's different flavors and different experiences you'll have. And that's what we're trying to like capture for you, right? And a lot of our schools might not be the right place to go for certain individuals. And certainly we kind of, we review that. We review like what your feedback is towards us from our interviews. We review what your applications look like. So really, we're not trying to build a class of identical students. We're really trying to build communities here. And so we approach holistic review under that sort of I guess that sort of understanding and that perspective. And so mission fit, if you will, isn't really anything about having that perfect application or anything, but rather the idea that you're able to show us just every facet of who you are. And we take that into account in all of our processes.
And so a huge part of that application is the personal statement. I know everyone here is probably wanting to learn more how they can strengthen their personal statement, especially at this stage where people are starting to input their information in AMCAS. So from all your experiences of reading personal statements, what do you say has distinguished a strong and memorable personal statement from an average one?
I'm happy to jump in. I love this question, and tend to have like some strong feelings about it. I mean, the you've already said it right there. It's a personal statement. It should be personal to you. You shouldn't be writing about what you think we want to hear. This is your opportunity to share your story, your why medicine. This is not the place where you kind of regurgitate your CV in narrative form. I encourage you not to, uh, let me rephrase that. I wouldn't waste your precious character count restating things you have already shared elsewhere, such as in your experiences. You can count on every school is going to read every bit of what you have said. You don't need to worry that, oh, what if they don't read my experiences? I should talk about it again here. That doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't include stuff about your experiences in your personal statement. There is an opportunity potentially to go a little bit deeper about some of them and maybe how they shaped your why medicine or what you hope to do with your career in medicine, but it's really the opportunity to showcase who you are. And then I know sometimes it can be can create some anxiety and to feel like, can I feel safe being my full authentic self? And you should feel free and safe to be your authentic self. That is what will shine in a personal statement. If you veer towards the telling a school what you think they want to hear, I will just remind you that cliches are cliches for a reason. And that is because lots of people say the same thing. I've wanted to be a doctor since I was 5 years old. I just really love science. I'm just very fascinated by the human body. All of those things may be true, but I would suggest, are those the key factors that are driving you to a career in medicine? And I highly doubt that they are. I think there's a lot more to that, and you just need to be able to articulate that in your personal statement. And then just a plug for, AIs can sometimes help you polish, but it's based on word averages and it can sanitize your personal statement a bit and take away that personal component. So use it sparingly and make sure it's still in your authentic voice. And that you're not going to get to an interview and someone's going to say, this doesn't feel like the same person. I'll pause there.
I think the only thing I'll add in with that is just that, I think to Miss Weeks's point, I think the best statements are the ones that usually demonstrate things like your reflection, emotional insight, growth, motivation for medicine, self-awareness, and to be your authentic self. You don't need dramatic stories. We need honest stories. But at the same time, also, I think one thing that I do find interesting is that uh, when you're approaching college essays, especially when you're applying to undergrad, there's this idea that you need to be almost allegorical or metaphorical and kind of start opening with things that may be a little more off base with you getting to like the meat of really what you're trying to talk about. And so I would strongly implore all of you to really talk and kind of, to Miss Weeks's point, use your word count to your advantage there and really get to the point on like what you're trying to say and how you're trying to say it. A lot of what we're also viewing is your ability to articulate your ideas in word format too, right? So we want to get to like where you're at and who you are. Um, in that fashion. So just keep that in mind as you think about that. And I think that the average essays are the ones that, as I said, are not, I suppose by omission, are the ones that don't take that into account. That seem to be almost resumes in almost paragraph form. So just keep that in mind as you're beginning to kind of consider what you want to talk about and how you want to talk about it. And let me be very clear with everyone here. Everybody has a story. So you all hail from, as I said, so many wonderful places and so many walks of life. And I think like we're eager to hear it. So just keep that in mind as you start drafting your essays.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate a few things that I think are really important that were stated and reemphasized is that AI can be utilized for like brainstorming and idea generation and kind of thinking through, but it should not be writing your essays. It's pretty easy to tell. I think that's a big mistake. And but we use it, and that's okay because we use it in medicine too. But just remembering that your voice needs to shine through, and AI is not your voice, most definitely, right? It knows nothing about you. And so, as was stated earlier, and I really agree with this, that Miss Weeks said was that like we don't know anything about you. You're a blank piece of paper. You're online for most of us, but you're blank. And so all the words you share is all that is defining you. And at the end of your personal statement, you've shared your journey that is always going to not be average because it's yours. Like just implicitly, there's no way it can be like that. It's going to be your words, so that authenticity hopefully will come through. But it has to answer the question of why you want to be a physician. And it is very unlike, I really agree with Dr. Krishnan, your college essay. It is not a college essay. It really should speak to the experiences that led you to this decision to go down this really, really long, arduous, challenging pathway of becoming a physician. So make sure that question is answered clearly and pulling through in a little more depth than your activity section allows. Or I agree with a little more reflection than the activity section allows.
So you're mentioning the activity section, which, moves me into the next question, which is, you know, in that activity section, it differs from the personal statement in that you can really just talk about those different kind of experiences that you engage in. But which ones tend to stand out most? Is it the clinical things, research, community service? I feel like those are the standard ones that everyone, tries to fill out almost like a checkbox, but like what tends to stand out most and which kinds of experiences really should be designated as those most meaningful? Is it necessary for it to be a clinical experience? Is it necessary for it to be research?
I can jump here, Neil. I mean, I think um, I, I don't know if I can necessarily point to one thing specifically that's going to be the experience that you need to flag as being your most meaningful, right? I think that's so subjective, and I feel like you really need to figure out a way in which, I mean, that's a personal decision that I think all of you need to make about what experience you choose as the most meaningful to you. Um, and the way that I usually like encourage students to think about that is that, you need to choose experiences that genuinely change you or that shaped your perspective. And it's not just like the most impressive sounding activity, but the one that like spoke to who you are, right? Like your soul. And I think that that's the one that drives you into like kind of going to that next step, right? And I think all of you know that. You know the ones that was really, really meaningful to you. And the thing is, keep that in mind too, because we take note of that. And when you go for your interviews, for example, we want to hear about that. It's not so much the idea that like, okay, well, that's the only thing that we're going to talk about, or that's it's the only point worth mentioning. I think that, more than anything, I think we want to hear about, as I said, the things that like motivated you and changed your way of thinking. There were activities that I remember for people who were doing, I'll never forget this one student that he did an alternative spring break. He had very marginal experiences, like all the way through. And he said that, but the one activity that he just really, really emphasized with that alternative spring break, 1 week. And he said that that changed my life completely. And he was from this rural town. He had never approached medicine in that way and in that fashion. And he said that I went to Haiti in that alternative spring break during one of their recent earthquakes. And he said, completely changed my life. And to us, that is hugely meaningful, right? And certainly that it's a small area in his like larger application, but boy, was it momentous. And so I just want to say that like that we take that into account, and certainly that's something that could be life-changing. But that's also the difference between the breadth of experience and the depth of experience that you can have as well. So keep that in mind as well as you begin to sort of curate like which experiences mean the most to you. Because obviously, as we're talking about word counts, you also are limited when it comes to the experiences that you can include in your application. So take note of that. Take note of like which ones are the ones that you were committed to, because hopefully the ones that you really like are the ones that you keep doing. And the ones that you really like also, you like to like really have a lot of depth of leadership experiences and things like that. So um, I'll pause here, but I think like those are some things you should take into account.
I'll just add, I agree with, everything that was stated, and everyone's experiences they should be uniquely your own, meaning there's going to be those common ones in terms of themes of clinical experiences, research, but how you choose your specific time is your own. And what has impacted your decision is you're, again, have to decide yourself. I think when you think about the three most meaningful, you want to try to discern the difference between what's most meaningful on your journey to medicine versus what might be very important to you, but not necessarily as meaningful in that pathway to medicine. So I would suggest that you would think about clinical experiences, research experiences, engagement in the community, education experiences, leadership experiences to be the anchors of the three most meaningful for your application for medical school, right? Your CV, your application is always aligned to what you're applying to. And this is you're applying to the profession of medicine. So I think that you want to think about those, and a lot of admissions committees are going to be understanding that those are the reasons you made the decisions you've made to go down this pathway. But what they are specifically is going to be based on whatever you were engaged in.
In the interest of time, I will just add a couple of points that I really appreciate and want to double down on what Dr. Kundu said about remember this is your application to medical school. So meaningful in the sense of this is what you're doing right now, not necessarily, kind of in your whole life. But I want to re-emphasize that your written word is really the mileage, if you will, that you're going to get out of these experiences. So yes, you're telling us the name of the experience, the number of hours, but what you say about it is what's really going to speak to us as opposed to just the volume, right? So my experience of 500 hours in a lab is different from Dr. Krishnan's, is different from Dr. Kundu's. But we all may say that, and I might just say, I worked in Dr. So-and-so's lab in this department, and I leave it at that. And maybe Dr. Krishnan really talks about how impactful it was to work in this team, what they did specifically, what he learned from that experience. That is going to be far more valuable, even though we both did the same amount of work, that it's the same experience type. So really have your eyes on the big picture and think about also all of your experiences as a whole. And are you showcasing that you have the attributes that medical schools are looking for in their students and in these future providers? So that might mean that some really incredible things that you have done might not make it onto your application because you are choosing something that was more impactful. You can still talk about all of those experiences in your interview. You can submit supplementary information, but you're making this choice because you're trying to showcase who you are as a person, who you are as a future physician in this application. So really think about that. But beyond that, I double down on everything that my co-panelists said.
This is perfect. It's kind of segues into this quick follow-up on the activities. Ms. Weeks, you mentioned briefly about how describing your experiences makes the difference. So when we come to that moment of trying to describe our experiences in the application, what type of structure do you personally find that works the best? For example, should applicants lean more toward a narrative storytelling style, especially for the most meaningful, or keep it more concise and descriptive, saying things, this is what I did and this is what I learned? What have you found to be the most successful way that students have been able to showcase their skills to the best way?
I can pick up where I left off a bit. I think that it is dependent upon the experience and what you have to share. I think that some applicants feel like, or perhaps were advised that a story is the best way to go. And so they work really hard to put a quote or a story into every experience. And that isn't always the right way to go for every experience. And sometimes the stories or the quotes that applicants share don't provide any information to us about that experience. You read it and you're kind of like, okay, like that really doesn't tell me anymore, other than that you had this one interaction with this one patient and they said this, right? Does that share anything with me about what you learned from that experience? So I do think it is experience dependent. I think you have to be careful with it, and then have your peers or advisors look at it and ask them, do you understand what I did in this experience or what I learned from it? Why this was important to me. Or if they say, I don't get it, you need to work on that description a little bit more. And then just to remind, it's not a reminder because I didn't say it yet, there is no secret recipe to this that the three of us are holding and not sharing with you, or that the world is not sharing with you. It really is you, your story, the context of your journey that is going to get you success.
I don't have much else to add to that. I think that that's perfect. And I think that, really, every entry just, all I can say is that it doesn't really need to sound like a creative writing exercise. I mean, just lean into like your own reflections and insight. And I think you'll go a long way with like kind of really like kind of narrating everything out for us.
If do you have anything to add, Dean can do? If not, I can. Okay, yeah. So now that we've talked a little bit about the activity section, personal statement, but just more broadly, thinking about these two sections, what are some like red flags that you see, like things that are just like why would you say that? Like this is you might have done great in other parts of the application, but maybe you sort of tank yourself by saying this or doing this.
I don't know if that happens too much, but I think that you can share your experiences without maybe being negative towards definitely another like an institution or um, specific people is a little more complicated, but like showing kind of a lot of negativity towards something, that's okay as long as you kind of then were reflective and are able to maybe change something in your environment and you worked on that. I really don't know if there's when if you're really sharing something that's genuinely part of who you are and there's a discovery that happened in that and you're able to kind of have that narrative. I don't know if people will get penalized for that. I mean, some of the red flags are really basic ones like grammar errors and spelling errors and being incomplete, like incomplete sentences or things were cut and paste and wasn't paced correctly, wrong school names. I mean, they happen. Those are the errors that are big red flags that they were just usually we give a little bit of grace because there's a lot happening, but certain steps weren't followed then in that. So I want to be cautious that people feel that they can share. People are very, very open. I mean, I am in awe of the stories that we have the privilege to read and learn about and the experiences that people share. It is really, really amazing. So I think a lot of that comes through in a very positive way.
I agree that I think the fact that applicants entrust us with their stories is a gift. I would just say you are applying to a professional school. This is not the environment to be excessively informal. And so just remember you're applying to a professional school. Um, and then I would also say uh, you should have some exposure to the field of medicine, right? We want to see that you've explored what a career in this field might look like for you, and you still want to move forward. So, you know, whether that's shadowing, whether that is employment, whether that is volunteering, even if it's medicine adjacent, I would expect that you have exposure to the field of medicine and that I see that in your application. Otherwise, I don't understand why you are applying to medical school, or that you really understand what you are undertaking. So I'll stop there.
Can we highlight Miss Weeks, by the way? Like, can we just like really like just hone in on what she just said? That 100%. I mean, I can that's exactly the way that I think like we need to like be thinking about those things. Like everybody, please listen up. Like the thing that we're noticing, especially from a lot of the pre-health advisors that are also kind of assisting you along the way, is that they are trying their best to make sure that they're engaging with each and every one of you and are really trying to get you to the point where you do understand that you're applying to a professional school. And I know that the question was really kind of more pointing it towards applications. But the same thing goes for your interviews. The same thing also goes for the candor that you present and the professionalism that you present to our staff, and to everybody around us. Like, I mean, we're relevant. I mean, while we do reside in different states and different cities, we're a fairly small group, and so we do talk to each other. We do engage with each other, and we do also listen. And you know, we're very cognizant of who you are and like what brings you to our medical programs. And so I think to put a good foot forward, I think is something that all I would really implore all of you to really think about. And while I think for all of you, I think you do such a remarkable job, especially as it relates to like from the culture of respect. I think that that exists, like especially like within a lot of the students at NAMA. So you understand where we're coming from with that. And I would say really hone in on that sort of facet and really use that to um, think about things like your professionalism. But if I can bring it back to the applications then for just one more moment, I would say the only other thing there I would suggest is have while you may be really strong in thinking about those things, I think one other thing that I'd like you to also do is reach out to each other, reach out to other people. I know many of you may also be first gen students as well. Think about like talking to other people. Like that's okay. The thing is, like, to be very honest with all of you, you're not in competition with each other. Like you guys are not the same. And we say that, like, especially when we onboard you to our medical programs, that we really expect all of you to, like, really uplift each other. And that's that mindset that we want to have in our medical programs. Like, you're a community. Like, physicians help each other. Like, this is, as I said, that type of family that you guys are coming into. And I would say a really strong red flag is that lack of professionalism, the lack of maturity. And as I said, the lack of really being able to engage with other people to know where you've made a mistake and where you've gone wrong to like better equip yourself to be, to have that good foot forward.
Dr. Krishan, that kind of highlighted what I wanted to touch on in the next question, talking specifically about, engaging with medical schools during the process. So beyond, referencing programs or opportunities, in secondary essays, what are the most meaningful ways that applicants can engage with medical school institutions during the application cycle?
I think every institution might manage this a little differently. And I think that a lot of students consider engagement as a way of showing interest. And I would kind of flip the conversation because a lot of the content we try to share is about sharing who we are, what our curriculum is, the culture and community we're creating, the cities that we're in, and allowing you to have experiences to think, is that something that's well aligned, back to the mission fit for yourself. So that's where that engagement should really lend itself to be able to ask questions, ideally, maybe talk to students at that institution that you're really interested in, and not just to be kind of the checkbox to show that you're interested in that institution. I just kind of flip the conversation. It is you are choosing to apply to certain schools, and you're all probably at different paths in that journey right now. But going in, hearing about the schools, understanding the curriculum, um, again, understanding how you'll be engaged with the communities in those areas, what kind of patients are you going to be having the opportunity to see? Those are pretty important questions to be asking about. In terms of the formal ways, a lot of schools will have webinars, and we're kind of on these virtual environments quite a bit that you can participate in. Some might have students that you can connect to through different like organizations like your own, right? You can have those moments as well. And then otherwise it is it is an application, and then there's the outside things that are happening at each institution. I would really welcome my co-panelists to kind of add in, because I think every school might be just a little varied in this.
I agree, and I would say you want engagement to be meaningful. So if you're earlier on in your journey and you're meeting a lot of medical schools at, say, different like pre-med, pre-health fairs, think thoughtfully about what questions you want to ask when you approach those tables, and have meaningful engagement. So, going up to the table and like kind of tell me about your school, or looking for somebody to, you know, we're not looking to give you a sales pitch about our school. My co-panelists and I, we come from incredible universities. We love to talk about it. We love to talk about our programs. We love to talk about admissions. And we want to hear your genuine questions. That is a meaningful engagement. Repeating something to you that is on the website, that's not a valuable use of your time, or of our time, or of our time together. So I challenge you to, do your research, websites, the MSAR, conversations with peers, advisors, and then think about, in this time that I have to engage with this person from this school, what is it that I really want to know? And I'm also going to say something, and I have a feeling I might see a reaction. And that is when you come to webinars like this one, the people who I am going to remember when I leave here are Neil and Dina and Ryan, and is it Rayon or Ryan, as well, because I can see them. I can see that they are meaningfully, see, I see you, Christopher. So they are meaningfully engaged with what we are talking about, and they give me a person to look at as I am providing this, insight into admissions. So yes, there are situations where, you know what, I'm driving, but I really want to be in this. I can't have my camera on. I'm sick today. I understand, but being able to know that you are really engaged with what we're talking about is meaningful to me, at least. And so I tend to, even in an in-person lecture hall, and you've got, 180 people in there, I can see the people who are taking it in, and I can see the people who are texting on their phone, giggling with the person next to them, rather than paying attention. I think that's also a mark of, professionalism in that, like in lecture setting. And so it's not the quantity of contact, it's the quality of the contact. Feel free to disagree, Dr. Kundu or Dr. Krishnan, but I definitely feel that.
There's something to disagree with on my side. I think that's wonderfully put, and and I'll even echo to begin with by the comment that Ms. Weeks made in the chat. I mean, that professionalism also goes for pre-health advisors. Like as I mentioned earlier, and let me emphasize again, we're all listening, we're all watching. And, we have a commitment to our institutions, but also in healthcare in general, to make sure that we're bringing the next generation of physicians to come on board here. And there's a lot of changes happening, everybody, and I think everyone's aware of it. And, our focus is on really looking at that. And I'll tell you this, like, with the panelists that we have here, like my co-presenters here, we are deeply committed to student success, deeply. You'll never find people who aren't more committed to all of you than those that are in admissions offices. And that's the thing, though. It's that commitment also comes with like a contract that we all have with each other, where we spend time with all of you, we answer your questions, we answer your emails, we spend time putting up our webinars, we come here. We just want to make sure that you guys are all aware of that. And I think meaningful engagement to us really just means being able to connect with us in that same way. So just keep that in mind as you go through like all of your like ways to connect with us. As Dr. Kundu mentioned, I think that we all certainly have different variations, I suppose, when it comes to what's the best way to sort of engage with us. But I think there is that sort of common thread that exists with us all, that we do expect you to act like a physician in training, and that's what your road to medicine is, right? And if we are seeing sort of you know parts of your application that don't necessarily meet up to those expectations, it's not exclusionary, but certainly it's something that you need to start working towards, and it's something that's part of your journey as well. And maybe that's something that has to do with your preparedness, towards like a future career in medicine. So keep that in mind as you begin to put your applications together and engaging with us, because I do think that that goes a long way. And we're all here for you. And I think being able to have those meaningful points, I think, are going to be um, very advantageous, but certainly can be something that could be more so something that you should better construct for yourself as you put your applications together.
So I want to thank the three of you for answering Dina and I's questions. But we want to give also some time for everyone in the audience to ask some questions. So if you do have a question for any of our panelists, please just use the raise your hand feature, and Dina or I will call on you. And if you can't talk at the moment, you can put your questions in the chat, and Dina and I could read it out loud. Yeah, Rayan, you can go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for answering all of the questions and for being here. I had a question specifically for Dean Kundu. I'm a Northwestern undergraduate and I'm interested in the PSP program. And I was wondering, with the MCAT being something that's not considered in that program, how can we as students who have just done 2, 3 years as undergrads really stand out in the application process with PSP?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for the group, the pre-scholars program at Northwestern is for juniors at Northwestern to apply for early assurance and admittance to the Feinberg School of Medicine. And one of the benefits of not of being accepted into the program is not taking the MCAT. So as you mentioned, there's mostly it's about less time. I'm not as worried about the MCAT because that preparation is still expected in terms of a very rigorous program that you're in right now. And so the committee is honestly, they're trained to recognize that you have 2 years and a quarter only. You're going to have less time. And so what we talked about earlier is that sometimes it's not the time necessarily, but it's the quality of experience that's important, your reflections on those experiences within all those different domains. So I do think there is some emphasis of making sure that you've had direct patient care exposure, you've had some research exposure, you've been engaged on campus and things that are meaningful and important to you, potentially have are moving towards leadership roles because those happen later on, typically in the undergraduate experience. And again, the committee understands that you haven't had as much time, especially now we have students who are taking more time and have gap or glide years. So you just kind of have to readjust. But the MCAT component is not as relevant. I mean, again, the academic curriculum and components so far have to be in line to meeting the prereqs or competencies that are expected for any student. So I'd say kind of all the same expectations are there. We just know that the quantity might not be there, but the quality should demonstrate itself.
Thank you.
Mm.
If no one has any other questions, oh, okay, I see. Zahra, go ahead.
Hi, thank you guys so much for all of your advice. When it comes to the personal statement and describing different setbacks, how can a student frame it as like growth instead of excuses and just not, you know, come across in the right way when explaining your story?
I think by making sure to include what you learned from that experience. So, it might be cheesy to say that we learn more from our mistakes, right? So, really demonstrating that you have done that self-reflection, have learned and grown from whatever it is that happened, whether that was an academic setback, whether that was more personal in nature, uh, a physical thing, whatever that is. And again, you want to give enough context that they understand what you're talking about, but you know you have to decide whether you're oversharing, right? But if you're going to talk about those setbacks, it's really important to talk about what you learned from it, and how you're going to grow. And then if it was a, mistake, how, what have you done to make sure that that isn't going to happen again? I think, Zara, that really comes into play if you're talking about like institutional actions or things like that that you have to disclose on an application. So you really want to go, you of course have to share what happened, but you need to go beyond that so that we understand you've taken the time, you've thought about what happened, you understand, you take ownership of that. You're not deflecting and saying, you know, I, I got an operating while intoxicated, but I was pulled over because my tail lights were out, right? You're not taking ownership of having, had a drink in that example. So take ownership for what happened, reflect on it, and tell us what you learned from it.
Thank you so much.
If no one has anything else to add, Hannah, would you like to go ahead? Is it Hannah or Hannah? Sorry.
No, it's Hannah and Hanan. It's a long story. But thank you guys so much. It's been so informative. I just had like a question. I know you guys talked a lot about being like true to yourselves and like just original with like respect to yourself with your application. So I was wondering like compared to like some two people who like may have similar experiences in stats, how do you guys like differentiate between an accepted applicant and one that may not get accepted? Like what would be the determining factor in that if like they're both really qualified, but like who would be able to take the next step?
Well, I think that for two qualified applicants and one that was admitted and then one that was not admitted, my thought here would be that that admitted student showed some type of potential and something else in that application that was reflective of them being admitted. Like the idea of admitting a student there with similar stats, I think is something that and I used to believe this like a lot when I was an undergrad going through the pre-med process. Um, that they had the same grades as I did, they had the same scores, but they got in and I didn't get in. And to be very honest, I do think everyone is their own individual. The one thing I would suggest is that those that do end up getting admitted, whether it be in the beginning of a cycle, in the middle, or even at the end, show a tremendous amount of growth, a tremendous amount of self-reflection, academic potential, clinical experiences, like all of those things are kind of like in that sort of boat on how well that they're perceived by the admissions committees to be a potential candidate for medical school. And I would say those that may not yet receive that, either they're in the running or there's still some things that still need to be sort of better like embellished. So I do think that there's certain like gradients, if you will, of like achievements and accomplishments and potential for success that I think that admitted student had that maybe that other student maybe did not have. So it's difficult to give any sort of like distinct criteria that one might have versus the other. But I would suggest that I think that that would be sort of what it is. It was just that I think that, you are looking at, I don't know, as I said, showcasing yourself in that best way. And I think that that individual that was admitted showed that, whereas the one that did not has yet to show it or has yet to receive an admission officer or offer like in the future, for example. And I don't know if that necessarily answers your question, Hannah, but I would say like that's kind of like what my mindset would be. Does that kind of make sense to you?
No, no, yeah, it does make sense. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I don't know if any of my panelists could like answer that a little bit better. That's my mindset towards it.
I agree. I think there's no direct comparison. Like it's just I understand how it feels like there is, but there's actually so many differences and similarities in certain ways, but it's not as clear cut to give you one objective takeaway point. It's going to be really multifactorial and based on the individual applicant.
Thank you.
So I think we only have time for one more question, just to be respectful of everyone's time. So Christopher, could you please go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys also for being here. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your guys' insights. I don't know if you guys could hear me. Uh, but I'm an undergrad right now at the University of Michigan. I'm a freshman, and I just had like a quick question. So between like different applicants that come from like really competitive undergrad programs, what distinguishes like a really strong experience from an experience where you can see that they're ready to be in the profession of medicine?
Um, Thanks for your question, Christopher. I would say that it's the totality of all of your experiences. It's not one particular experience. It's that whole journey, and looking at how you spent your time outside the classroom. Are you demonstrating that readiness for a professional school? Have you explored the field of medicine? But there's no one scale tipper, if you will. We're looking at all of that in order to make that determination. So I challenge you, as a first year student to really get out there, be curious, explore different experiences, find the things that you are excited about, you feel passionate about, and then explore those a little bit further. Some stuff you'll check it out and you'll feel like, you know what, that is just not for me. Well, you've learned something. That doesn't mean that it was a waste. You've learned something about yourself or about that experience. But really get out there, be curious, and find those things that bring you joy. That, when you get excited about something and passionate about something, especially, you're potentially going into a service profession. So think about those things as you're exploring the experiences. Of course, be cognizant of your own time. It is not an unlimited resource. And then continue, of course, to keep your eyes on how you're doing academically, and don't overextend yourself. Use your peer supports here with NAAMA, your advisors, but really just get out there and engage with medicine, or medicine adjacent things, or things that bring you joy and help you develop as a person. And I think you can't go wrong. And to everybody, regardless of just Christopher who asked this question, keep a diary, if you will, a Google Doc, a notes thing on your phone as you are having these experiences. Keep notes in the moment of the way that you're feeling about those meaningful moments, because I promise you that Christopher might have this really incredible experience this year, and maybe he's not applying for 3 more years. That magic of that moment when he got really excited about something in this shadowing experience, in this volunteer experience, whatever it is, 3 years from now, you're going to remember the experience, but not that magic. And that magic is gold in your application to be able to say what you felt, what you learned in that moment. So keep track of that throughout your pre-med journey so that you can rely on it later. It will make a much more meaningful application. I hope I got to your got where you wanted me to go.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
So it looks like we are at the top of the hour. So I just want to thank the three of you so much for your insights. I'm sure everyone found them extremely helpful. If we didn't get to everyone's questions, we will be having a third session in our admission series. So be sure to register for that if you are interested in hearing more. But once again, thank you so much, Dean Kundu, Dr. Krishnan, and Ms. Weeks. This was, although I've been through the application cycle, I still found this incredibly interesting, and I'm sure I could use some tidbits of this hopefully in the future for residency apps.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining. I definitely second Miss Weeks about keeping that journal of everything that you've done. It really does make the application process easier once you get to it. But thank you everyone for joining, and have a good rest of your day.